So I'm starting to see a lot of comments like this. We could take a look at it. It's on one of the channels that I watch. It's Cosmos Gatto, YouTube user. He said that truthers are modern day useful idiots. And you're starting to see a lot of comments about many individuals saying that why do these guys have a cult-like following to Ron Paul? Why do they hate fiat money? Why do they hate the Federal Reserve? I mean, you're starting to see many more comments like that, and they're saying that, hey, guess what? You should be in favor for the system because guess what? In the 1900s, they lived on freaking farms. Right now, you are living in a technological advanced society. But my issue, or what used to really drive me nuts when I was a little younger, is that this entire system finances the aggressive warfare state. And this is what the people who are in favor of central banking, they seem to ignore this concept. And whether they're truthers or whether they're libertarians, Ron Paul supporters, some of them may get into stories about the Rothschilds, but I don't even need to get into that. And we could look at the Federal Reserve's role when it comes to the warfare state a little closely in this video, which I have gotten to before, but we could get into it again. You want to look at World War One? Let's go down. This is at the Mises Institute. Let's go down further in the article, and it's right over here. We could just read one part of it. It could show, first of all, before I get into this, when you have a central bank, you have the ability to spend more than you otherwise could have. Just like you learned basic economics, the currency is elastic, meaning that it's like a rubber band. You could expand the rubber band a little further than what normally could happen. So, with the United States, you could have a warfare state and a welfare state, right? The leftists in this country want a big welfare system, which makes sense. But what they fail to acknowledge is that because of the central banking system, you could spend more on the warfare state. Even though you had wars during the Great Depression, the gold standard, specifically a hard gold standard in the 1800s, the wars were less costly, which I could get into in another video. But let's just read a glance of this. With the United States gearing up for the war, President Woodrow Wilson announced in April 1917 the first war bond issues, or Liberty Bond drives. To help prop up the war bond market, another change was made to the act to further pry open the Fed's balance sheet to the acceptance of government debt. Section 13.8 loans were now permitted to serve along with real bills and gold as eligible backing assets for the Federal Reserve notes. And then it just goes on and on and on. You could see here how central banks fund war, and this graph in the Mises Institute shows the growth of the Federal Reserve balance sheet during World War II. World War I expanded, right? The central banks funded it. Some people are going to get into stories that they read in Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, and some people said that's cuckoo stuff. Okay, this is not cuckoo stuff when you look at how the Federal Reserve's balance sheet expanded. Now we want to go to World War II. We could read a little glance off another website. So I'm at the Federal Reserve's role during World War II, and this is from federalreservehistory.org. And if you want to look glimpse of this, you could see this. Plans for financing the war were devised by the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. These organizations met frequently to determine how to finance the war and organize machinery for marketing United States government securities. And we could read, where should we go? Here. So we could read a little glimpse of this. To direct the savings of American citizens into the war effort, the Treasury and Federal Reserve marketed a range of securities that would fit the needs of all classes of investors, from small savers who wish to invest for the duration of the war to large corporations with temporarily idle funds. To distribute these securities, 12 Federal Reserve banks organized victory fund committees and established banks to market war bonds in cooperation with commercial banks, businesses, and volunteers. So, yeah, I mean, this website does talk about the Federal Reserve's role during World War II, and you could read Alan Meltzer and how they kept interest rates artificially low to finance the war. I mean, you want to go on to another subject? Let's look at Japan. Now I'm in the book Corporate Financing and the Governance in Japan, The Road to the Future, and do you want to read part of this? Let's look at military expenditure grew during the 1931-36 period. But so did the economy, so that its share remained about the same. The growth of military expenditure was supported by expansionary fiscal policy implemented by Finance Minister, I can't pronounce his name, let's just call him KT, who replaced JI when government changed in 1931. Takahashi abandoned the gold standard and stimulated the economy with an expansionary fiscal policy financed by government bonds underwritten by the Bank of Japan. As the economy started to recover thanks to expansionary macroeconomic policy and cheaper yen, Takahashi slowed the increase of fiscal expenditure, including military spending. Cumulative frustration with these decisions led a group of young military officers to assassinate Takahashi in February 26th incident. Military expenditure started to grow much faster than GDP from 1937. For the decade as a whole, a sympathetic observer noted that the economy in Japan this period was not a totalitarian economy. In many respects, the policies followed from 31 to 36 were very similar to those in the United States, but in one important respect they were different. These efforts toward recovery were constantly being threatened by restrictive trade practices of the other powers and the ambitions of the Japanese military. So, let's get this straight. We started to see the Japanese spend more on the military. When did they start to spend more on the military? Right around the time they got off the gold standard. See, military expenditure rose up 31 to 36. And we know what happened with the Japanese, right? I mean, they were part of the Axis, right? So, on one end, central banking policies funded the Japanese military. And then on the other end, the central banking policies funded the United States military arms. Conspiracy or not, what we know for a fact is that central bankers financed the wars. I mean, no crackpot conspiracy out there. So when I start to see individuals like Paul Krugman and maybe Mike Norman praise the Federal Reserve or defend the Federal Reserve, well, indirectly, even though they may come off as anti-war or not in favor of the military-industrial complex, they are indirectly supporting this military state that we have and that we've had in the past. So this was used to really drive me nuts, and I used to get really passionate about this, but now I'm slowly but steadily calming down about this. But anyways, this is why I think truthers get really emotional about fiat money, about the gold standard, etc. And that's why there could be, as some people call it, a cult-like phenomenon to this gold silver movement or anti-Federal Reserve, so on. And I think the people in the mainstream media do not illustrate this. I mean, I think the problem is that some people talk about these stories, which some may consider conspiracy theories or whacked out theories. I'm not saying that they're false. What I'm saying is there are other ways that you could show people, hey, the Federal Reserve promotes an aggressive military state. And this is a fact, not an opinion. And these guys who are defenders of the Federal Reserve, they get nuts when you mention this. And you could actually show them the literature of this. And yeah, that's what I want to say. I think this is one of the reasons why truthers hate fiat, hate the Federal Reserve System. quite obvious, but I think this is one way to show it. Anyways, thanks for listening to me, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.